A few years ago, I did all these portraits of people in town. I did make 70 portraits in 1 year, and I was meeting with people in the mornings, and I had got to sit and talk with them, and we'd have coffee while I painted their portrait, and it was just something that I did every other day, or as much as I could get people to sit down with me and let me paint their portrait. I met with this man, and he was longtime Purdue professor, department head, uh, really intelligent guy, really funny, and we had the best experience, and just talked and laughed, and he really got along great, and he was really excited because the next day I was gonna paint a portrait of his wife, and the whole time through it he always referred to his wife the whole time as my beautiful bride. And I thought that was really sweet that he was like, I married her for 50 years or something. He still called her his beautiful bride. And so the next day I got to paint his beautiful bride. And wow, they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. She was really mean. Like, she was just mean. Like, she didn't want to be there. She wanted her portrait painted. She had nothing to do with this. She just, kind of didn't have fun being around her. It was just like I painted her portrait, and that was fine. And she came around and looked at it after I was done, and she said, I don't like it. Her first response. Yeah, it was like a night and day situation to her husband that I painted earlier, who just, everything was great. I don't like it. I knew when I was making it that nothing I did was going to make her happy. But later I had the privilege of when the stuff was hanging in the art museum, and all of her friends that were in the art league and were around, ladies who lunch, and they were telling her how wonderful they thought the portrait of her was, and it looks just like you, and I just sort of sat back there, chuckling to myself about it, because it was just one of those. It was one of those experiences. Of the 70 portraits I did, was the one that, like, that couple kind of really stood out to me. Portraits are such a personal thing that, like, you're the sitter and you see it's just like we don't not we don't like hearing our voices recorded. Sometimes people that's what I sound like, or they're used to seeing themselves in the mirror, and then they see a photograph of themselves and that doesn't look like me. I don't know, it was one of those things where it kind of goes to show that, like, we just do what we do, and if you can't analyze it too much, you can't be too critical of it. You just have to go forward. People are gonna do that, and there's all kinds of different opinions out there about what's good and bad, and different ideas of beauty, and all that. Most of what we see is halftones. We don't see too much really black, or light. And if you think you do see something that's black, and you find something darker. His hair looks pretty dark, but then if you see the dark on his black jacket, that's a different story. So it's so the majority of what we see is in the middle range. So the first thing I do in starting a drawing like this is I will put in the whole middle range. So with this, I'm going to just go ahead and take this charcoal dust that I've built up here, and I'm going to just dump it all over here on the paper, and then try to create a nice even middle value range. So something that is in the halftone area, lighter halftone. I'm trying to get a nice consistent background as I do this, because believe it or not, a lot of this that I put down here is going to be part of my finished drawing, but it gets that nice consistency right away. Well, when I was a kid, that's how I got into art. Was when I was really young. I was 4 or 5 years old, and my uncle, through marriage, he was married to my dad's sister, was a student at the Art Institute of Chicago, and he would come home from class and he would give me like the same assignments he was doing. So he was like, "Oh, here's some assignments, whatever it is," and I would kind of work along with him, and so he really encouraged me in that. And so when I was growing up, I was always good at art. It was the only thing I was good at. I was terrible at athletics. I kept playing sports because that's kind of what was expected of me, I thought, in school. And it wasn't until I was later in high school where I decided this stuff really, I'm no good at it. It isn't good for me. I'm not very well coordinated, but I can paint and draw good, so I'm just gonna focus on that. And then influences from there was in school I had these wonderful teachers that come from a long history and lineage of painters. We could trace our artistic lineage back to famous Renaissance masters by just who the teachers and who the students were. And so at the American Academy of Art, really the patron saint of that school would have been Richard Schmid, who just passed away a couple of weeks ago, I think maybe last week. And Richard Schmid is really like one of those special painters. He's some national treasure. But my teachers at the American Academy were big influences: Bill Parks, Ted Smithkevich, John Trapp. I was really interested when I was young in Andy Warhol and the pop art idea, and I think what I liked about that was sort of like artist as like a rock star or something. Andy Warhol was like a movie star and painter. He was like a rock and roll star and painter. And he also was about the idea of, if you just make enough of it, we're just going to make thousands of these, and then eventually people are going to like it. So some of that idea of that pop art was something that got me kind of interested in it at a young age, and then I really loved like the surrealist painters like Salvador Dali, and I'm a big fan of Marcel Duchamp, some of the Dada stuff from a conceptual point of view. When it comes to technique in painting, I like a lot of the Baroque painters, Rubens and Caravaggio, that kind of extreme sort of realism, and then moving forward in history, we get to people like John Singer Sargent, who were and even Degas, who are sort of like these classically trained impressionists. So the guys who Sorolla was another one, who could just they could really paint. They could really paint. They could really draw great, and they could really paint. And they could use color like the best of them, and they understood abstract design concepts, but it was mostly convincing realism that they were doing. So, I really kind of look at that, and you already see them kind of starting to come out, huh?
Yeah, no, it does.
Yeah, I'm not very good at that stuff. I'm pretty good at cartoon. I mean,
well, you got a lot of years ahead of you. You're okay.
Yeah, it takes time to learn it. Yeah, I spent a long time in art school classes trying to learn how to do it. I think this idea of doing things that you thank yourself for later, whether it's education, being prepared by having their knowledge, and taking steps that are going to help with the next step. So understanding the process and not being afraid to make a little bit of a mess, but having a good plan, that kind of proper prior planning idea. So I think I try to use that in my work process, but also the whole way through. If it's going to be something that's going to be shown in a gallery, I've got to think all the way through to the end of how it's going to be framed, how it's going to be presented, how it's going to be delivered. But I think that idea that just helps in life in general of doing the groundwork, the preliminary stuff, so that when you do start to add the execution, that you have everything you need. and just that idea of preparation. Basically, I went to school for fine arts, so I have my bachelor's of fine arts degree from the American Academy of Art, and in order to do that, I went in the military first. I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years to get GI Bill money to help pay for school. So I went through that program at the American Academy of Art, and then moved here to Tippecanoe County, where I was teaching at Purdue. I had a teacher's assistantship and got my master's degree from there. Ended up hanging out in this area, bought this Victorian house with the studio, and that's kind of kept me here in this area. People have this thing for some reason when they're drawing eyeballs, they get one eyeball that's just perfect and then the other one not quite so good.
I just did that.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So that's why I try to work them together. I try to work them at the same time so that they evolve at the same time. There's a painter named Robert Henry, was one of the Ashcan school painters, and he wrote a book called The Art Spirit. And there's a passage in that book where he says something to the effect of there are moments in your life when you see beyond the ordinary, when you see things that are no one else is gonna see, and it's sort of like, I feel like that's the artist's role, is to kind of keep track of that stuff. You can look at it from a evolutionary perspective, and back when we were hunter-gatherers, the difference in the color red when it came to what berry you ate meant life and death. That sensitivity to like a twig snapping in the forest is the difference of whether or not you killed something for dinner or were dinner for something else. And so I think that the arts, we keep some of those like primal instinct skill set. We keep it alive in painting. That no one today, you just go to the grocery store and you get the berries and they're not going to kill you. So it isn't that important if you know the difference between this this red or this blue or that blue. But artists are continually studying those things, sharpening our sensitivity to a level to where a subtle difference, we can distinguish that subtle difference. We can pick up on that sound or that thing that the rest of the world's just going to like walk right by and never look at twice. So I feel like that's what we're here for, is to kind of keep track of those things and share that way of seeing. They're like, I think in the Robert Henry quote, he said something about that the arts are like a sign. It's like a signpost to this greater vision, this greater experience, and so that's what it is. I think we just are here to remind people about those moments in their own lives when they see, when they have seen beyond the ordinary, but maybe we kind of live in that world all the time. So sharing little bits and pieces of that for the people who aren't creative people, aren't trained in the arts, not interested in that sort of thing, they can experience a little bit of that through us. Choose your battles is one. Not necessarily as far as a working process goes, but as far as like that was something that came up with an art show where they were trying to show some nudes, and the gallery owner Randy Ross gave me that advice, because he's like, I don't want to fight the mayor on this. We're just gonna move those paintings that he doesn't like. Choose your battles, Werner, he said. So I try to keep that in mind. But that idea of just sticking to it, just follow your dreams, follow your bliss. That's the best advice. That's all I can tell my students. If they're asking me about what they want to do, I mean, life as an artist, no one's going to be lining up to buy your paintings. They're just you're going to have to work at it. You're going to have to go out and sell them. Or maybe you never sell them, and you're going to have to work some other job in order to do it. But just that idea to just never stop and to just keep going. There's a painting book that I've got that I always share with my students, is this Harold Speed's Science and Practice of Oil Painting. And at the beginning of it, he says, maybe the parent who discourages their children from going into the arts is doing the right thing, because it is only those you can't discourage that are worth encouraging. And so, when I teach, I don't try to go out and discourage people, but at the same time, I know that if they're going to be easily discouraged, it probably isn't the life for them. Or if they're real worried about what somebody thinks, it probably isn't the life for them. Because sometimes it's a lot of hard work, and you do a lot of things, and you think it's just great, and people don't respond the same way. They don't love it. So, but you still stay at it just the same. You just keep going, and hopefully it gets better, and maybe some of those people you'll bring along later. But that idea of just you don't let it get you down, and just continuing to work. Same thing again. All right, that's how you're gonna be?
Yeah.
Okay. Same thing, I'm gonna lay out this sort of middle tone. I really like teaching because I like to see people get better at what they're doing and their interests. For me, the portraiture and life drawing is a thing that I enjoy doing for my own work. But I really like that teaching aspect of it. A lot of people get into the arts because they're more hermits and they like to not be around people, but I kind of like to be around people, so that teaching gives me that opportunity. About like that, yeah.
That's about like those.
Yeah.
I would like
Looks pretty good.
My biggest goal is just continuing, just that I meet up here every week with a group of other artists, and every week I'm drawing. My goal, like piece by piece, is to work in a way where my process is, if I stop at any time, it's finished. So I'm working in a sort of fluid process that's finished at every stage. As far as artistic career, I feel like I'm doing the things I said I wanted to teach, and I'm getting to teach. I learned that after teaching for 10 years of art history at Ivy Tech and teaching drawing at Purdue and local art centers and museum. I mean, I don't need to work for a school in order to teach. I think at some time I would love to be able to go to a school like the American Academy of Art and teach life drawing there, but I don't need that because I'm already teaching it actively here and have no administration to worry about, no headaches and that kind of stuff. But that part of it, the big goal for me, because I got in it with that desire to teach, was trying to learn the information, the technical information, and then pass that on to other people. So when I see other people doing it, I love that, and I hope that they go out and do wonderful things with it. As far as my painting, I mean, the big goal is that that I'm gonna, I try. Like I say, sometimes I make things that I'm not thrilled with. I don't love that painting, but somebody else does. So from like a career perspective, I feel like I'd like to sell more paintings. I mean, that would be great. From a work perspective, maybe finding better ways, and I've done this a little bit, and I'm trying to get into more of it with like larger scale works, where I can kind of combine the things about art that I love, like the idea maybe some of that conceptual surrealistic stuff with this sort of classical influenced impressionist kind of painting. Like, how can I maybe make some style of my own that has that dreamlike quality, that the surrealists were going for, and then but has that painterly technical skill level that we might see in like a John Singer Sargent painting. I should probably try to get more into selling and marketing it, but it just has never been it's never been a necessity for me, and it's never been like the thing that I love about it. Trying to sell it is not the thing I love about it, but it would be nice.
Like back in the metal.
You can see how I started with these. Sometimes these charcoal drawings are something to look at when you see them finished. You just like, wow, how does that happen? People think it is a really tedious, little process, but it's very loose and kind of, the way I'm arranging the values it happens all pretty quickly actually. So it's not, it isn't something necessarily we have to labor over. The Grateful Dead tribute band is really great because it's I've listened to that music my whole life. It has a lot of room for creativity because there's so much, it's built around this idea of improvisation. And the people that come to see it and dance, they're it's like a big family. Like, we all love the same stuff. Most of these people have listened to that music their whole life. We do get people who have never heard it or didn't know what it was. They thought it was heavy metal or something, and then but they'll show up at our shows and young people, and they're like, well, I've never heard this before, but I like the music, and the people around me are pretty cool, and they kind of dress like me and kind of dance like me, and like, oh, they find their tribe that way. So I think it's kind of a community service in a way, I guess. But I love doing it, and that's a nice thing about the arts too. The painting I could do forever. I know painters that are in their 80s that are still working. Music, same way, but it just gets harder to haul around the gear and stuff. With the painting, I only have a little box. But the music, I need a whole school bus and trailer for that. So.
Like a done.
Once I was working on a drawing in my drawing class, this guy up here, it wasn't Dr. Trapp, it was Mr. Parks. And Mr. Parks, I was doing what I'm doing now, like messing around with the hair and the drawing. And he just comes over to me and says, "What are you going to be, a hairdresser?" It's always like a double-edged sword. It's sort of like, the more I look, the more I see. The more I'm going to see wrong with it, the more I'm going to see right about it. It's like that with music too. I can be disappointed in myself because I didn't hear some subtle phrase that we should be including in the music, but I've heard it before, but or listened to it, but I never really like grasped onto it. It's like, oh, okay, I need to play that now. I like the idea that it is a building process, and that you're continually getting better, but also that challenge of it can be discouraging, where it's like you start to get into this really high level stuff, and I would tell my students that you think you're great, go to the art museum and I'll show you some really great stuff, and then you can come back and tell me how great you are. We're always met with that. There's something better out there, and it's both inspiring and can be discouraging, because it's kind of like, wow, well, I'll never be as great as that person or that artist. Where at the same time it's like, well, I'm striving to be as great as that person, and how do I know? Maybe it is. Maybe it is. I've seen contemporary artists working today that are as great as anybody who's ever lived. There's tons of them out there. I've got a great friend of mine who paints like Caravaggio. It's amazing, and he spent his entire life trying to learn it. I guess that's it for me. It's just how it's both. It's kind of like the things I like about it are also the things I don't like about it. That that it can be that double-edged sword where it's both rewarding and discouraging at the same time. But then that just keeps that mindset that, hey, you just keep plugging away and don't worry about what the parts you don't like. Just keep try to focus on the stuff you do. I wish I painted. I think everybody is every artist I've ever met feel like they wish they painted more. I should do more painting, but there are other things I love, and the drawings I like too. It's similar like what the love-hate relationship. It's like I love charcoal drawing. I got a collection of 19th century academic charcoal drawings, and I love them because they're so fragile that, like, the fact that this thing, I mean, you could sneeze on it and ruin it, or brush up against it and smear it and it's gone. It's so fragile, and so, like, I collect those because, like, if you have one that's, like, perfect from 100 years ago, you know, wow, what an accomplishment. You know, I've stewarded some of these through 20 years of my life, so I've extended the lives of those drawings, and that's it with my. I tend to do a lot of drawing, and I know that it's not as permanent as an oil painting. It's not as permanent as a sculpture or something. You know, it's fragile like we are, and that's a great, and it's a bad, you know, because a lot of this work that I'm making is probably going to wind up ruined because a lot of it's works on paper, and if it's not kept somewhere good or not preserved in some way, it's just gonna, you know, fall to the, you know, with time, it's just gonna fall apart. But it's also that fragile nature of it that I love. Boy, that's a hard one, huh? Who am I and what do I do? I'm James Werner, and my whole life I've been a visual artist, oil painter, and but I also play music and am involved in some other things. In my job, I work for the county government, and I've been working with GIS mapping stuff, so it gives me a little bit of an outlet for some creativity when it comes to building maps. You know, that old kind of cartography stuff is interesting to me. But mostly I like teaching. I've been passing on what I know about fine arts and painting through classes, teaching up here in my studio for about 20 years.
Hand down, please. Hand down. Very awesome.
Good.
I have in Lafayette. I used to work a lot with Randy Ross. He's got a custom framing and fine arts business, and he's normally the one who would handle people buying and selling my work. He hasn't been doing too much since COVID. They shut down the galleries and all that stuff, so people can just contact me directly. You know, I'm on social media, Facebook, and those kind of things, and if they see something they like and can inquire to see if it's for sale. I do tomorrow night. They're having the first Fridays in Lafayette, so I'll be showing a little bit more. In fact, with the COVID, I've actually shown more this year than I have in many years. I've been more interested in it. We had a little show at the art museum in Lafayette. I've got some works sometimes down in their gift shop, and I still do some work for them now and then. So it's a good place to contact for me. But just direct contact is fine. Yeah.